There is this automatic thing when you look at the back of your camera and you see all these different settings and buttons, and you just sit there and think, it's a bit like going into a spaceship and seeing all those buttons and going, I don't know what any of these does. Obviously, as technology grows, mobile phones are becoming more and more on point, and sometimes can do an even better job than the complications of needing to understand every single manual setting on a DSLR. Doesn't matter what camera you've got. Today I'm going to go through the 8 settings that you need to know. Doesn't matter which camera. I'm hoping that you will save this as a little crib sheet, a little cheat sheet, and hopefully you'll keep you using this as a reference point where you can keep going back to it and going, oh, I just need to remember what this is, so this is what we need to do. So obviously the first thing you're going to need to know about is your shooting modes. There are many different ones depending on which camera you use, but fundamentally you need to know 3. Just 3. I know, it's nice and simple. We'll go through each of those settings and how they interact with each other. So the first one you're going to need to know is portrait or aperture priority, which basically makes the aperture the fundamental thing. Don't worry about if you don't know what that means. We're going to come to that in a moment. Shutter speed is the second one, and it's really, really important to be able to understand the need for shutter speed and when you need to be in that mode. So shutter speed is particularly important if you're going to be doing high motion. You want to capture motion blur, or you're doing video. Okay, those are the 3 things that you need to know about and the way that works. Finally, full manual mode. There will be times when you'll need to take full control, okay, especially if you're going to do things like nighttime photography, or if you're looking to do some special effects within the camera instead of doing it in post. Aperture is quite literally how big the window is. It affects the depth of field, so you need to bear that in mind, because obviously if you're going to do landscape photography, you need to make sure that you can see as much of it as you can. There might be times when you want to blur certain parts out. Shutter speed is important because obviously the more we look at things like video, you need to set your shutter speed and you need to adapt everything else, where normally we would say adapt the shutter speed and forget everything else. Then it comes down to your focus mode. Your focus is really, really important because again, it comes down to that depth of field issue. How much do you want to focus on? Where do you want it to focus? Why do you want it to focus there? And that's important. So sometimes we'll ask it to focus on a very, very small area of the image, and other times we'll ask it to do a much larger area. That's where your focus modes come in. It is important that you understand so that you don't end up shifting it and focusing on the wrong point, and that's when you get your subject out of focus. Now don't worry if you do that, because there are a couple of tricks and tips that we can use with AI technology that will help shift that and sort that out for you, but it's not ideal. You want to get it in camera. Next is going to be metering mode. Metering mode is quite simply how the computer in your camera, that tiny little person who's sitting there doing all the calculations of the light coming in, is which light do we care about and which light do we not care about. This is really, really important when you're doing things like backlighting something, because you obviously want the subject to be exposed, but you're not worried if the back is overexposed. So using a spot metering there would be particularly important, or if you're looking to do particular highlighting. So understanding where your camera is choosing to do the lighting is important. And remember, this is no different in phone photography. You can choose to figure out where it's taking the light from and how much it's taking. It's important. Drive mode, obviously we need to know whether it's going to do a single or continuous burst mode. We all know what burst mode is these days, but the reality is all cameras can do it. You've just got to find the right setting and know how to achieve it, okay? There is a downside to burst mode, and don't think it's always the best thing for you, simply because your burst is sometimes quicker than your focus. What you end up with is some of your pictures in focus and some of them obviously out of focus. This isn't ideal, and I highly recommend that you choose the right one depending on the situation that you're in. Finally, you need to know your file formats. File formats are really, really important because it's how much data is going to be held within the actual file and what you can then do after it. We all know that DNG, RAW images are important. So again, it doesn't matter whether you're on camera or on your phone, you can still do RAW situations. You just need to know the best way to do it. So picking out your file format based on the size and the storage and where you want to share it is significant, so make sure you know the differences between those. If you want me to go more in depth into every single one of these, all you need to do is hit like for me and subscribe, and I'll make sure that we do a detailed tutorial on each of them. If you'd like personal coaching on this, then we actually have a course already set up for you, which is going into a deep dive of each of these where you can hit me up with any of your questions. So go check that out. See you next time.